The Universal Academy's cafeteria hummed with the usual chaos of midday. Feeding time, a cacophony of clicks, chirps, and harmonized frequencies that would have driven most species insane. I, fourth of the Krellin Dominion, sat, with my nutrient paste, observing the peculiar drama unfolding 3 tables away. The human girl sat alone as she did every rotation. Her name was Riley Hoffman, and she was, by all observable metrics, utterly unremarkable. Small for her species, barely reaching the shoulder joints of most Krellins, with that strange brown fur that grew only from her head in an unkempt tangle. Her clothing was standard issue Academy gray, slightly wrinkled, slightly too large. Everything about her screamed average, forgettable, beneath notice, which made what happened next all the more confusing. "Hey, Earthling," Zara called out, her voice dripping with that particular brand of adolescent cruelty that transcends species barriers. Zara was a Vorton, all sleek purple scales, an aristocratic lineage, the kind of student who treated the academy like her personal dominion, still eating that disgusting solid food. How primitive can one species be? Riley didn't look up from her meal, some combination of plant matter and processed proteins that humans insisted on chewing with their teeth, actual chewing like animals. I watched her shoulders tense slightly, the only indication she'd heard the taunt at all. I heard humans can't even manipulate gravity fields. Another voice chimed in. Drex, a Thorin with 4 arms and an ego to match, they have to physically carry things with their appendages. Can you imagine? Laughter rippled through the nearby tables, the kind of laughter that makes you grateful you're not the target, even as something uncomfortable squirms in your digestive tract. Riley took another bite of her food, chewing slowly, methodically. Her eyes remained fixed on her plate. "Maybe she's deaf," Zara suggested, sliding closer with predatory grace, "or just too stupid to understand standard galactic." Now I should mention something here. Something important. The Universal Academy wasn't just any educational facility. It was the premier institution for training the next generation of galactic leaders, warriors, scientists, and diplomats. Getting accepted required either extraordinary talent, significant political connections, or in rare cases, being part of a newly contacted species that the Galactic Council wanted to evaluate. Riley Hoffman was here because humanity had joined the galactic community exactly 3 cycles ago. She was one of 5 humans scattered across the academy, each being observed, assessed, cataloged, understanding whether humanity posed a threat, offered potential, or was simply another mediocre species to be filed away and forgotten. From what I'd observed over the past 2 months, humanity was leaning heavily toward option 3, leave her alone, Zara. The words came from my own mouth before I'd consciously decided to speak them. Zara's triple-jointed neck swiveled toward me, her violet eyes narrowing. "Oh, Vorth, the bookworm wants to defend the primitive. How touching. Tell me, are you collecting charity cases now?" "I'm suggesting," I said carefully, my gills fluttering with mild irritation, "that perhaps we focus on our upcoming combat theory exam instead of harassing someone trying to eat lunch." "Combat theory," Drex laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together, as if the human could handle combat. "They don't have natural armor, telepathic abilities, regeneration, enhanced strength, or literally any biological Advantage, they're fragile little meat. Sacks that die if you look at them. Wrong, this was unfortunately accurate. According to every database entry I'd accessed, humans were remarkably vulnerable. No scales, no exoskeleton, no energy shielding. Their planet had somehow produced a sentient species with almost no natural defenses, and yet they not only survived but developed space travel. It was baffling from an evolutionary standpoint. Riley finally looked up. Her eyes, I noticed for the first time, were an unusual shade of green, like the bioluminescent algae in Krellin's spawning pools. They met Zara's gaze with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Not anger, not fear, something else entirely. Are you finished? Riley asked, her voice quiet but clear. Zara blinked momentarily, thrown off balance. What? I asked if you were finished. Riley stood up, gathering her tray. Because if you are, I need to dispose of my waste products and get to my next class. If you're not finished, could you perhaps schedule your taunting for a more convenient time? Maybe send me a calendar invite. That way I can make sure to care appropriately. The sarcasm was so dry, it took several students a moment to register it. Zara's scales flushed a deeper purple, a sign of rising anger and Vort. You dare? What, exist? Yeah, I'm pretty committed to that at this point. Riley moved past Zara with her tray, her movements economical and purposeful. Thanks for the daily reminder that I'm different, though. Really keeps me grounded. I watched this exchange with fascination. This wasn't the response of someone broken by constant harassment. This was something else, something controlled, something that suggested depths beneath the unremarkable surface. Riley disposed of her tray and left the cafeteria without looking back. Zara stood there, her mouth parts working soundlessly, clearly struggling with the fact that her victim had just walked away without providing the satisfaction of tears or anger. Weird human, Drex muttered, returning to his own meal. But I was still watching the door where Riley had disappeared, my analytical mind churning. There was something off about this entire situation. The academy didn't accept truly useless students, regardless of political considerations. So what were we missing? What was humanity hiding behind that facade of weakness? The rest of the day passed in the usual blur of theoretical physics, advanced chemistry, and interstellar law classes. But my attention kept wandering to Riley Hoffman, sitting in various corners of various classrooms, taking notes with actual physical writing implements, because humans apparently enjoyed doing things the inefficient way. I didn't speak to her. We'd never actually had a conversation beyond the occasional nod of acknowledgement. Different social circles, different species, different everything. But I found myself increasingly curious about what was really going on beneath that carefully maintained exterior of normally. The opportunity to find out came sooner than expected. It was the third rotation after the cafeteria incident, and I was in the training facility late in the evening cycle working through gravitational manipulation exercises. The facility was supposedly empty, all the overachieving students having finally retired to their quarters after another exhausting day of proving their superiority. I was levitating a series of weighted spheres in increasingly complex patterns, trying to master the delicate balance required for the advanced certification exam, when I heard it. Breathing, heavy rhythmic breathing, coming from one of the private training Chambers, curiosity overrode my better judgment. I set down my spheres and moved quietly toward the source of the sound, my webbed feet silent on the rubberized flooring. The chamber door was slightly ajar, and through the gap I could see her. Riley Hoffman was training, but this wasn't the tentative, awkward training of someone trying to adapt to galactic standards. This was something else entirely. She moved through a series of physical exercises that would have taxed most species, her body flowing from one position to another with a grace that contradicted everything I thought I knew about human physiology. Push-ups, hundreds of them, her arms compressing and extending with mechanical precision. Then some sort of abdominal exercise that looked genuinely painful. Then a strange hopping movement that propelled her entire body upward repeatedly. But it wasn't the exercises themselves that froze me in place. It was the intensity, the focus, the absolute unrelenting determination radiating from every movement. Her face was covered in that clear liquid humans secreted when overheating. Her breathing labored but controlled, and there was something in her eyes when she paused to drink from a water container, something that made my scales prickle with instinctive weariness. This was not the face of someone weak. This was not the expression of someone broken by taunts and isolation. This was the face of someone preparing for war. She finished her water, set down the container, and then did something that made me question my entire understanding of human capabilities. She walked to the chamber's gravity controls and adjusted them upward, significantly upward. The display panel was visible from my position. She just increased the gravitational pull to 3 times standard. Most students trained at 0.8 or 9 standard. To make exercises easier, she just made everything 3 times harder, and then she continued training as if nothing had changed. My mind raced through the implications. Humans came from a gravity well significantly higher than standard galactic measurement. I'd read that in the briefing documents, but I'd assumed, like everyone else, that this meant they'd be slower and weaker when adjusted to standard gravity, that their biological systems would struggle with the adaptation. We'd all gotten it exactly backward. Humans weren't struggling with our gravity, they were being held back by it. Riley moved through a combat sequence, now striking at invisible opponents with her fists and feet, her body twisting and spinning with aggressive precision. Every movement was practiced, refined, intentional. This wasn't someone learning to fight. This was someone who already knew how, maintaining skills that must have taken years to develop. How long had she been doing this? How many hours had she spent in empty training chambers while the rest of us slept or socialized, building strength and skill in secret, letting everyone believe she was exactly what she appeared to be? Why? The question consumed me as I watched her train for another 20 minutes before finally powering down the gravity and collapsing onto the floor mat, her chest heaving, her eyes closed. She lay there for several minutes, not moving, just breathing, her face a mask of exhaustion and something that might have been satisfaction. Then her eyes snapped open, and she was looking directly at the door, directly at the gap where I was standing, directly at me. "You can come in, Vorth," she said, her voice tired but steady. "You're not as stealthy as you think you are." Every instinct screamed at me to flee, but my curiosity was stronger. I pushed open the door fully and stepped inside, my gills fluttering with nervousness. How long have you known I was there? I asked. Since about 30 seconds after you arrived. Riley sat up slowly, wiping the sweat from her forehead with a towel. You breathe louder than you think. Also, you cast a shadow when you move past the hallway lights. I felt my skin flush blue with embarrassment. I apologize for intruding on your privacy. Do you, though? She tilted her head, studying me with those green eyes. Because if you were really sorry, you would have left when you realized someone was training. Instead, you watched. Why? It was a fair question. Because nothing about you makes sense. Riley laughed, a short, sharp sound, devoid of humor. Yeah, I get that a lot. No, I mean, I struggled to articulate the confusion that had been building for weeks. You let them mock you every day. Every meal, every class, you sit there and take it. And I've seen students break from less, but you don't break. You don't even bend. And now I see this. And I realize we've all been completely wrong about you, and I can't understand why you'd let us be wrong. She was quiet for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she stood, moving to the water dispenser for a refill. You want to know the truth, Vorth? She drank deeply, then turned to face me. Truth is that humanity learned a long time ago that being underestimated is one of the most powerful advantages you can have. We call it playing the fool. We call it rope-a-dope. We call it the long game. I don't understand those references. I know you don't. That's the point. Riley leaned against the wall, her posture relaxed despite the intensity of her previous workout. Look, every species here has some incredible biological advantage, right? The Vortines have telepathic abilities and energy manipulation. The Thorns have 4 arms and regeneration. The Krellans, your people, can breathe underwater and have that whole distributed nervous system thing going on. I nodded, unsure where this was leading. Humans don't have any of that, Riley continued. We're not the strongest, not the fastest, not the smartest. We can't fly or breathe fire or phase through walls, but you know what humans are really, really good at. What? Her smile was sharp enough to cut adaptation, endurance, clears throat. And spite, I repeated, unfamiliar with the term's application in this context. Yeah, spite, the ability to keep going, purely because someone said we couldn't. Riley set down her water container and began a series of stretching movements that looked anatomically improbable. See, when humanity first made contact with the Galactic Council, we were given a very thorough presentation about our place in the cosmic hierarchy, which was, to put it mildly, near the bottom. I remained silent, sensing she needed to continue without interruption. We were told our technology was primitive, our biology was fragile, our culture was barbaric, our chances of contributing anything meaningful to galactic civilization were approximately 0.03%. She bent forward, touching her head to her knees in a way that made my own joints ache sympathetically. The council representative actually suggested we might want to consider becoming a protectorate species, letting more advanced civilizations guide our development for the next few thousand years. That must have been difficult to hear, I offered. Riley's laugh was genuine this time, filled with dark amusement. Difficult? Fourth, you just told a species that fought 2 world wars survived multiple near-extinction events and clawed their way from caves to spaceships in 10,000 years that they weren't good enough. You didn't crush it. Our spirit, you lit a fire, she straightened up, rolling her shoulders. So when they offered spots at the Universal Academy to evaluate humanity's potential, our governments didn't send the best and brightest. They didn't send the prodigies or the geniuses or the naturally gifted. My gills fluttered rapidly. Then who did they send? They sent us. Riley's expression was completely serious now. 5 very average humans with one specific instruction: survive, learn everything, and show them absolutely nothing. Let every species here think we're exactly what we appear to be, weak and unremarkable, while we figure out how this whole galactic civilization thing actually works. The implications crashed through my mind like a meteor strike. Your intelligence gathering, that's such a dramatic way to phrase it, Riley said. But she didn't deny it. We prefer to think of it as educational reconnaissance. We're students just like everyone else. We're just very motivated students with a tendency to get underestimated. But why reveal this to me? The question burst out before I could stop it. I could tell the instructors, the other students, everyone. Riley studied me for a long moment, her head tilted slightly. Could you though think about what you'd be saying? You'd have to admit you were spying on another student during private training. You'd have to explain why a supposedly weak human was working out under triple gravity, and then you'd have to convince everyone that the girl they've been mocking for 2 months is actually running circles around them. Intellectually, she paused, letting that sink in. Plus, and this is the important part, I don't think you're going to tell anyone. Because you're not like Zara or Drex or the others. You're actually curious about things beyond your own superiority. You ask questions instead of making assumptions. That's why I'm talking to you instead of pretending I didn't notice you lurking in the doorway like a creepy fish person. We prefer aquatic humanoids, I said automatically, then felt foolish for caring about terminology at a moment like this. Noted. Riley grabbed her belongings from a corner bench. So, here's what happens next. You're going to go back to your quarters and think very carefully about what you've learned tonight, tomorrow in the cafeteria when Zara inevitably says something cruel. You're going to see me respond the same way I always do, quietly and without drama, and you're going to understand that it's a choice, not a weakness. And then what? And then you decide whether you want to keep watching from the shadows or actually have a conversation like civilized beings. She moved toward the door, then paused. Fair warning though, befriending a human might damage your social standing. We're not exactly the popular crowd. I've never particularly cared about popularity, I admitted. Yeah, I noticed that too. You eat alone almost as much as I do. Riley's expression softened slightly. Think about it, Vorth. I'll be here tomorrow night, same time. You're welcome to join me, or you're welcome to pretend this conversation never happened. Either way, I trust you'll make the right choice for you. She left the training facility, and I stood there for a long time, my mind churning through everything I'd learned. Supposedly primitive human was playing a game so sophisticated that nobody had even realized they were pieces on the board. I didn't sleep well that night. My rest chamber's water tank felt too small, too confining, and my thoughts kept circling back to Riley's revelation. How many other things had we gotten wrong about humanity? What else were they hiding behind that facade of weakness? The next day's classes were torture, not because of the material, but because I couldn't stop analyzing every human interaction through this new lens. Riley sat in advanced astrophysics, taking notes with her primitive paper and writing instrument, asking simple questions that now seemed anything but simple. Each inquiry was designed to extract maximum information while revealing minimum understanding. She was playing every instructor like a musical instrument. Lunch arrived with its usual theatrical cruelty. Zara held court at her table, surrounded by admirers and sycophants, and right on schedule. She noticed Riley entering the cafeteria. Oh, look, the human decided to grace us with her presence again, Zara announced loudly. Tell me, Riley, have you figured out how to use the sonic shower yet, or are you still washing yourself with water like some kind of animal? Riley collected her food tray, her expression neutral. Still using water, actually. Turns out thousands of years of evolution made us pretty attached to it. Wild right. Disgusting is what it is. Drex contributed. Bathing in the same substance you drink. Humans have no sense of hygiene. You're absolutely right, Riley agreed pleasantly. We're basically walking biohazards. Someone should really quarantine us or something. The sarcasm was so thick I could practically taste it, but Zara and her followers seemed to miss it entirely, taking Riley's words at face value. They laughed and continued their meal, satisfied with another successful humiliation. Riley sat alone, eating her solid food, her eyes downcast. But I saw it now, the tiny quirk at the corner of her mouth, the brief flash of amusement quickly suppressed. She was enjoying this. She was actively entertained by their complete failure to understand her responses. It was masterful. I made my decision. That evening, I returned to the training facility. Riley was already there, working through her routine under elevated gravity. When she saw me standing in the doorway this time, properly visible and announced, she smiled. So you came back, she said, not stopping her exercises. Does this mean we're friends now, or are you still in the observation phase? I'm not certain, I admitted, stepping fully into the chamber, but I would like to understand more about humanity, about your mission here, about why you think it's worth being mocked and isolated. Riley finished her set and powered down the gravity controls. Those are big questions, Vorth. You want answers, because once you really see us, you can't unsee it. Your whole perspective on galactic civilization might shift. I believe that shift has already begun. Fair enough. Riley gestured to a nearby bench. Sit down, fish boy. School is in session. Over the next hour, Riley explained things that weren't in any academy database. She told me about Earth's history, about how humanity's greatest strength came from their greatest weakness, their fragility forced them to cooperate, their lack of natural weapons made them inventive, their short lifespans made them ambitious. We had to be smart because we couldn't be strong. Riley said we had to build communities because we couldn't survive alone. We had to develop technology because our bodies were inadequate. Every disadvantage became a motivation for innovation. But surely the Galactic Council understands this, I protested. They must have historians who analyzed your development. Oh, they analyzed us all right. They looked at our wars, our violence, our environmental destruction. And they wrote us off as dangerous primitives who got lucky with space travel. Riley's expression darkened. What they didn't consider was that all those conflicts taught us things: strategy, resilience, the ability to bounce back from catastrophic failures. We've ended our own civilization at least 3 times and rebuilt from the ashes every single time. That's horrifying. That's humanity. Riley shrugged. We're the species that looked at nuclear weapons and thought, you know what, let's try diplomacy. Instead, we're the species that nearly destroyed our biosphere and then spent a century fixing it. We fail spectacularly and learn exponentially. I process this information, my mind, making connections I'd never considered. So when you came here, you weren't trying to prove yourselves. You were trying to learn how to operate in a system that has already decided you don't matter. Now you're getting it. Riley leaned forward, her green eyes intense. The Galactic Council has been stable for 10,000 years, 10,000 years of the same species in charge, the same power structures, the same way of doing things. They've forgotten how to innovate because they don't need to. Everything works exactly as it always has, and humanity wants to change that. Humanity wants a seat at the table. Riley corrected, a real seat, not a token gesture, but we're patient. We can wait a generation or two while we figure out how everything actually functions, while we learn their technology, their politics, their weaknesses. The word weaknesses hung in the air like a thread. You're planning something, I said slowly. Something big. Riley smiled. That sharp, dangerous smile. We're planning to survive, Vorth. That's what humans do best. We survive, we adapt, and we thrive, whether the Galactic Council likes it or not. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of her words settling between us. I want to help, I heard myself say. I want to understand more about humans, about what you're really doing here. Why? Riley's question was direct, challenging. Why risk your standing, your future for a species you barely know? I thought about Zara and Drex and all the others, so confident in their superiority, so blind to anything that didn't fit their predetermined categories. I thought about the Academy's rigid hierarchies and the Council's ancient bureaucracies. I thought about how nothing had changed in galactic civilization for thousands of years because nobody wanted change. Because maybe humanity is exactly what the galaxy needs, I said. Maybe we've all gotten too comfortable, too certain of our place in the universe. Maybe it takes a species with nothing to lose to shake things up. Riley studied me for a long moment, then extended her hand. That peculiar human gesture of agreement. Welcome to the revolution, Vorth. It's going to be a wild ride. I grasped her hand, noting the surprising strength in her grip, and wondered what exactly I'd just agreed to, but somehow I was smiling. The next few weeks transformed my entire academy experience. Riley and I developed a routine. Publicly, we maintained minimal interaction. Nothing that would draw attention or suspicion. But privately, in late-night training sessions and stolen moments between classes, she taught me things that weren't in any curriculum: human history, human psychology, human strategies for surviving in hostile environments. It was fascinating and terrifying in equal measure. Let me show you something, Riley said one Evening, pulling up a data file on her personal device. This is called the Vietnam War, small agricultural nation versus the most powerful military on Earth at the time. I watched the historical footage, seeing the disparity in technology and resources. The larger nation won, obviously. Actually, no, the smaller nation fought them to a standstill and eventually won through sheer persistence and guerrilla tactics. Riley's expression was serious. That's the thing about humans, we don't fight fair, we fight smart, we use terrain, psychology, time itself as weapons. We make the cost of winning higher than the benefit. That's devious. That's survival. Riley closed the file. And it's why the Galactic Council should be paying more attention to us, because right now they see 5 unremarkable human students. What they don't see is 5 intelligence operatives who are mapping every system, every weakness, every potential leverage point in their entire power structure. Are the other humans here doing the same thing you are? Of course, Marcus is in the engineering track, learning everything about galactic technology. Co is studying xenobiology, understanding exactly how every species functions at a biological level. David is focused on economics and trade, and Sophia is in the diplomatic corps, learning how to manipulate political systems. Riley counted them off on her fingers, were each specialist, gathering specific intelligence while maintaining our cover as mediocre students. That's actually brilliant. Thanks, we learn from the best every intelligence organization in human history. Riley started her warm-up routine. Now stop distracting me and start training. Just because you're learning our secrets doesn't mean you get to slack off on physical conditioning. I'd begun training with Riley under her guidance, and while my aquatic physiology made some exercises impossible, she'd adapted others to work with my strengths. It was grueling, painful, and absolutely addictive. For the first time since arriving at the academy, I felt like I was actually growing instead of just maintaining, but maintaining the charade during daylight hours was becoming increasingly difficult. Hey, Vorth, Zara cornered me. After Advanced Combat Theory 1 afternoon, I noticed you've been leaving the evening study sessions early. Where exactly are you going? My gills fluttered with nervousness. Personal conditioning. I've been struggling with the gravity variations in combat scenarios. Really? Zara's eyes narrowed. Because Drex saw you entering the training facility around the same time that human does her pathetic attempts at exercise. The facility is available to all students. I said carefully. I wasn't aware we needed to coordinate schedules based on species. Just seems odd, that's all. Zara leaned closer, her voice dropping. You're not actually spending time with her, are you? Because that would be social suicide. Bad enough you defended her that one time. I'm simply using available resources for personal improvement, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Who else is present is irrelevant. Zara studied me for another moment, then apparently decided I wasn't worth the effort. Whatever, just remember, association matters here. Choose your friends wisely. Vorth. She left and I released a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Riley had warned me this might happen, that my change in routine would eventually be noticed. We'd have to be more careful. That night I told Riley about the encounter. Zara's suspicious, I said. She's watching my movements. Of course she is. She's a typical apex predator personality. She needs to monitor everything in her territory. Riley didn't seem concerned. Don't worry about it. Will vary your schedule have. You show up to the facility at different times, make it look random. This is getting complicated. Intelligence work usually is. Riley grinned, but think of it as valuable training. If you can fool Zara, you can fool almost anyone. Is that what we're doing? Intelligence work? You're doing whatever you want to call it, Riley said, seriously. But me? Yeah, I'm exactly where my government sent me to be, doing exactly what I was trained to do. Don't forget that, Vor. I like you, I genuinely do, but I'm here on a mission, if that makes you uncomfortable. It doesn't, I interrupted, or rather it does, but in a way that feels important, like I'm part of something meaningful instead of just another student going through the motions. Riley's expression softened. I get that. The academy can feel pretty pointless sometimes, can it? All this training for a future that's already been decided by people who graduated centuries ago. Exactly. It was validating to hear someone else articulate the frustration I'd been feeling. The Krellin Dominion has had the same governing structure for 3,000 years, the same families in the same positions. My future was determined the moment I hatched. Well, here's the thing about humans, Riley said, beginning her workout. We don't believe in predetermined futures. We believe you make your own destiny. It's probably why we're so annoying to cosmic order. I find it inspiring. Then stick with me, fish boy. We'll teach you how to swim against the current. The weeks blurred together in a strange double life, days spent maintaining mediocrity, nights spent pushing boundaries. I watched Riley deflect insults with practiced ease while secretly documenting everything about academy operations. I attended classes taught by instructors who never imagined their lectures were being analyzed for tactical intelligence. I sat in cafeterias where students mocked humanity while unknowingly revealing their own species vulnerabilities, snorts. And slowly I began to see the galaxy the way Riley did, as a system that had been stable for so long it had become brittle. Then everything changed on a random Tuesday, 4th cycle, 3rd month. The alarm started during advanced quantum mechanics, a piercing shriek that sent students diving for cover. The instructor, a Mother Marian with crystalline optical sensors, immediately accessed the security net. This is not a drill, he announced, his voice tense. We have an uncontrolled entity breach in Section 7. All students are to proceed to emergency shelters immediately. Section 7 was the xenobiology research wing where they kept the dangerous specimens for study. The evacuation was chaos, hundreds of students flooding corridors designed for orderly traffic. I was swept along in the crowd, trying to stay calm when I realized something. Riley wasn't with the group. I scanned the fleeing students, searching for that distinctive brown hair, that slight figure. Nothing. She was nowhere in the evacuation stream, which meant she'd gone somewhere else. Against every instinct of self-preservation, I broke from the group and headed towards Section 7. The corridors were empty now, emergency lighting casting everything in red. The alarm continued its rhythmic shriek, punctuated by automated warnings about containment breaches and hazardous organisms. I found Riley in a primary junction corridor, standing absolutely still, facing something that made my blood freeze. A Vexen hunter, they were legendary across the galaxy, apex predators from a death world that made Earth look like a vacation resort. 8 limbs ending in molecular edge claws, sensory organs that could detect heartbeats from 50 exoskeleton that could withstand plasma fire, and most terrifying of all, an intelligence that understood hunting as both art and science. The Academy kept 2 of them for research purposes, studying their remarkable biology and hoping to understand what made them perfect killing machines. One had apparently decided it preferred freedom. Riley stood in its direct path, positioned between the hunter and the evacuation routes. She wasn't wearing any protective gear. She didn't have any weapons. She just stood there, her posture relaxed, her breathing steady. The hunter clicked and whistled, its communication pattern suggesting curiosity mixed with predatory intent. It moved closer, 8 limbs carrying its massive body with disturbing grace. Riley, I whispered, pressing myself against the wall. Run. She made a small hand gesture, commanding silence without looking away from the creature. The hunter stopped 3 away, its primary sensory organs focused entirely on her. It clicked again, a pattern I didn't recognize, and Riley clicked back. She was communicating with it in its own language. The conversation lasted perhaps 30 seconds, a series of clicks, whistles, and subsonic rumbles that bypassed standard galactic entirely. The hunter's posture shifted subtly, its limbs repositioning from attack stance to something more neutral. Then Riley did something completely insane. She stepped forward, extending her hand toward the creature. The hunter regarded her hand for a long moment. Its claws were extended, each one capable of bicting her with a casual swipe. One wrong move, one misread signal, and she'd be dead before I could even scream. The hunter clicked softly, almost questioningly. Riley clicked back, her tone patient, almost gentle. The hunter retracted its claws and carefully touched her hand with the tip of one limb. They stood there, human and apex predator, connected in a moment that defied everything I understood about biology and behavior. Then security arrived, 6 armed officers with containment equipment, and the spell broke. The hunter retreated smoothly, allowing itself to be herded back toward Section 7 without resistance, clicking what sounded suspiciously like farewell to Riley as it went. The security chief, a Thorian named Krent, stared at Riley with undisguised shock. How? What did you? It was scared, Riley said simply. Containment breach, probably terrified. I just asked if it wanted help getting home. You communicated with a Vexen hunter using their language. Kren's forearms hung limply at his sides. That's humans aren't supposed to be able to do that. The linguistic structure is too complex. Riley shrugged. I listened to the research audio files, seemed pretty straightforward once you understand the modal variations indicate emotional context. Those files are classified level 5. Krent said slowly. Are they weird? Must have accessed them by mistake. Riley's innocent expression was a masterpiece of deception. Anyway, is everyone okay? No injuries? Krent made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. Everyone's fine except possibly my understanding of human capabilities. You're coming with me. Administrators will want a full report. Riley caught my eye as they led her away. And winked, she just revealed herself to the entire security apparatus on purpose.